Hello, do you know why the Principality of Monaco is not part of France? And do you know why it's a principality? No? Well, we are going to see all this together right away. Enclaved in the south of France, on the Mediterranean coast and about 15 kilometers from the Italian border, the princely state of Monaco has roots much deeper than some cliches about this small European country might suggest. Covering about 2 square kilometers, this small sovereign state is the second smallest country in the world after the Vatican, spanning only around 200 hectares. The Vatican covers only about 200 hectares. That's the equivalent of a large French cereal farm, a cereal farm on which nearly 40,000 people would live today, generating a gross domestic product, that is to say the gross domestic product, or all the wealth created by the Monegasque economy of 6.63 billion euros. Still, in summary, as you know, Monaco, often called the Rock due to its geography, is quite unique. The steep geographical situation, creating a cove-like effect surrounded by reliefs, is central to the history of the territory. To discuss Monegasque history, we won't limit ourselves to the 2 square kilometers of the modern state, this division being recent, as you will see, but let's include its direct environment. Basically, the space you see on the map, and being bordered to the west by the Tête de Chien Massif, rising more than 500 meters above sea level. Mount Aigle to the north exceeds 1,000 meters, and Cap Saint-Martin lies to the east. The ancient history of this area is poorly understood, and it's uncertain if the seaside was permanently occupied during antiquity. However, ancient Greek authors speak of Monaikos as designating either a minor urban ensemble, libre built on the area. For precision, the Ligures are an ancient population of the corner, or simply a Ligurian tribe having occupied the area. However, it is certain that there was at least a port of minor importance on site, a fortified place near said port, as well as a temple dedicated to Hercules. Later, the Romans seized the territory and fortified the strategically positioned sector at the border between 2 Roman provinces. The fall of the Western Roman Empire in the 5th century led to a prolonged period of instability in the region, initially linked at first to the passage of various so-called barbarian peoples, and then in a second phase by the rise of Muslim power in the Mediterranean, known as Saracen. In this context, who will be, in that corner, pushed back around the 11th century. Emerging from this turbulent period, the territory is depopulated, paving the way for a new chapter in its history during the Middle Ages, which the princely state has inherited today. Thus, in the 11th century, the area depends on the bishopric of Nice, which itself is politically within what was, at the time, the Kingdom of Provence, which itself depended on the Holy Roman Germanic Empire, which was one of the most powerful political entities of the Middle Ages, essentially centered on present-day Germany, northern Italy, and eastern modern France. However, in 1191, the territory, especially the Rock, a rocky promontory, and that you see highlighted on the map, passes under the authority of Genoa, a powerful Italian merchant city at the time. These people truly laid the foundations of modern Monaco by fortifying the Rock, developing a real port as well as the city's activity. In January 1297, violent political struggles within the Holy Roman Empire and between the great Genoese families shake the region. 2 members of one of the great Genoese families of the time are going to seize Monaco by force, Francesco Grimaldi and Renier Grimaldi. And why am I talking about this? Well, because the Grimaldis still rule Monaco today, and the modern history of Monaco finds its roots at the end of the 13th century. In fact, Renier is considered the ancestor of the current princely house of Monaco, and thus appears on their genealogical tree under the name of Renier Thurs. However, he won't remain in Monaco long. The 2 Grimaldis, seen as rebels by the Genoese authorities, are expelled from the city 4 years after taking control of it. On the other hand, the son of Renier, Charles I Grimaldi, will retake the city in 1330 with the help of the Provençals and become the first member of the dynasty to truly rule over Monaco. He will also extend Monegasque authority over Menton in 1346, and Roquebrune in 1355. The Grimaldis will maintain their position by strategically playing their cards according to the circumstances. First protected by the Provençals, they will then rely on France until 1524, the year in which they come under Spanish protectorate, until 1641. It's during this period, in 1612, and in order to mark the authority of the Monegasque sovereign against the Spaniards, who were trying to increase their control over the territory, that the one whose title was simply Lord of Monaco takes the title of Prince of Monaco, a title giving more political weight to the Monegasque sovereign within the sphere of Spanish influence. Monaco remains a principality, a title held to this day. In 1641, Monaco sought to free itself from Spanish interference in its affairs. Intrusions that actually constitute a genuine occupation of the principality, and ends up placing itself under the protection of France again. A French garrison under the prince's authority guarantees Monaco's sovereignty in return, while formally recognizing the independence of the principality, which is sort of an independence under protection. It was at the beginning of the 18th century that the Monegasque sovereigns, who belonged like the population to the cultural group of northern Italy, became French. However, a little later, in 1760, Monaco signs a crucial agreement with the neighboring kingdom of Sardinia, which proves decisive for the principality's future history. Under pressure from Sardinians and with little support from France, preoccupied with the 7 Years' War, the Monegasque prince was forced to make concessions and concedes a good part of his territory inland, limiting the principality to its coastal possessions and determining the boundaries of each entity remaining under the authority of the Grimaldis, whether it's Monaco, Menton, or Roquebrune. This over 250-year-old treaty establishes the current borders and boundaries of Monaco. When the French Revolution broke out around 30 years later, Monaco largely avoided following the movement. The state's sovereign successfully maintains his authority until 1793, which sees the occupation of the territory by the very young French Republic. This resulted in the prince's deposition and Monaco's annexation to France. Monaco disappeared as a princely state for 21 years until 1814, when it regained political court, and in 1815, when the principality came under the Strait, Protectorate of the Kingdom of Sardinia. In the 19th century, following the Napoleonic era's reshaping of Europe, the principality faced turbulence, particularly in 1848. Menton and Roquebrune, still under the authority of the Grimaldis, end up seceding and join the Kingdom of Sardinia, meaning that the Grimaldis only control Monaco, even within its modern borders. A few years later, in 1860, Nice and Savoy are ceded to the French Empire of Napoleon III. Menton and Roquebrune, included in this cession, vote in favor of attachment to France after a popular vote. The following year, in 1861, a treaty between France and Monaco is signed, ratifying the cession of Menton and Roquebrune to the Empire and recognizing Monaco's independence. As of 1865, it is deeply integrated into the French customs, economic, and diplomatic system through a new treaty. In effect, the princes of Monaco hold all political power over their 2 square kilometer territory, while the French and Monegasque populations can come and go from one side of the border to the other without having to go through any customs. In the early 20th century, after World War I, where the heir of Monaco served in the French army, it was in 1918 that France and Monaco signed a treaty increasing French influence over the principality. The agreement stated that if there was no legitimate heir to the Monegasque throne, Monaco would come under French authority. It gets very hot for Monaco's independence there. Later, the Second World War profoundly shakes the principality, having tried, like other countries, to play neutrality during a time when this idea was merely a paper shield. The military and political collapse of France drives the principality into the arms of the collaborationist Vichy French state to protect itself, an Italian occupation. This won't be avoided as it occurs in late 1942, followed by a German occupation in 1943, liberated in 1944 by the Allies. The stance of the Principality alongside Vichy France will be the cause of a serious political crisis, plunging Monaco into turmoil for 4 months. Before France, now liberated, intervened to restore the rule of law and restore the authority of the prince over the rock, ultimately allowing a return to civil peace and stability in Monaco. More recently, in 1993, Monaco became the 183rd member state of the United Nations. That is to say, the United Nations organization, recognizing from an international perspective, not just a local particularity, but a country's sovereignty. However, the state is part of the Eurozone today, but has not joined the European Union. Today in November 2021, Prince Albert II rules Monaco, a principality since the early 17th century. The borders were established through agreements and arbitration starting in the 18th century, ending as early as 1848 or with the agreements of 1861 if one wishes to be purist. French is the official language of Monaco, a result of the close Franco-Monegasque relations and the political and geographical link between the two countries, especially since the 19th century. So this is how this European microstate, today more known for its economy based on tourism, whether it's luxury around the automobile or gambling, to name just that, of course, has managed to maintain itself until today. And to finish summarizing what Monaco is today, just turn to the first article of the Monegasque Constitution. The Principality of Monaco is a sovereign, independent state within the framework of the general principles of international law and specific conventions with France. A big thank you for watching. Subscribe if you want to see more content of this type, and leave us a thumbs up and a comment if you liked it. With that, I'll quickly explore the history of another small European country, Luxembourg.